It could be said that the admin officer, Amaya, was the one who felt the pull first. Once Mr. Ravindra managed to convince her to be intimate with him for the first time, she seemed completely captivated. After that, Amaya didn't want to let go of him. She appeared willing to do just about anything to stay close to him. Once again, Ravindra showed that his natural charm and talent for winning over women were as sharp as ever. Hello and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into yet another shocking and unsettling real-life story. This time, our journey takes us to the picturesque city of Nuwara Eliya, Sri Lanka. But don't let the serene backdrop fool you. This tale is anything but peaceful. At the center of it all is a husband who didn't just create chaos within his own family, but also managed to leave many women spinning in confusion with his outrageous behavior. A man with a lifelong hobby of exploring relationships here and there, he couldn't leave his habits behind, even as he grew older. What's the full story behind this scandalous case? Stay tuned, because we're about to dive deep into all the details. You won't want to miss this. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this story with your friends so we can reach even more people. Now, let's get into it. Our story takes place in the picturesque city of Nuwara Eliya, Sri Lanka. Known for its cool climate, sprawling tea gardens, and bustling tea factories, this city is one of the largest tea production hubs in the country. At the heart of this tale is Ravindra, an operations manager at one of these tea processing factories. Ravindra didn't have the easiest start in life. Growing up in a poor family, he couldn't afford to finish high school. His days were spent playing guitar and hanging out, yet he somehow managed to have a string of girlfriends. His friends even nicknamed him Ravindra the Female Conqueror. Then one day, he met someone who changed the course of his life, a wealthy young woman named Payumi. After learning about Payumi's well-off background, Ravindra wasted no time. He broke up with all his girlfriends and focused on building a relationship with her. Things moved quickly, and in 1995, they got married. Payumi was 9 years older than Ravindra, but their relationship seemed solid. They had 2 children who eventually moved to Kandy for school, leaving Ravindra at home with his wife and their domestic helper. Life seemed perfect. Ravindra worked as an operations manager at a tea factory, ensuring production ran smoothly, while Payumi managed the large tea plantations and rice fields she had inherited from her family. By all accounts, they were wealthy, but they were also known for their humility and generosity, often providing free services and assistance to those in need. Ravindra was also the picture of health. He worked out regularly, ate nutritious meals, and promoted a healthy lifestyle to those around him. But despite his seemingly ideal life, he couldn't shake off some of his bad habits. Even after years of marriage and having children, Ravindra's old ways resurfaced. In 2020, during the pandemic, Ravindra began working with a local foundation on an emergency health service project. Through this, he became close to Amaya, one of the foundation's admin officers. Amaya was young, single, and most of their communication happened through chats and phone calls. While Payumi was also loosely involved in the project, she took a back seat, allowing Ravindra to handle everything. As time passed, Ravindra's relationship with Amaya grew closer, far closer than it should have. What started as professional communication turned into something more, and eventually, they were acting like husband and wife. By late November 2020, Ravindra and Amaya were completely caught up in their affair. For Amaya, Ravindra wasn't just a wise, kind family man. He was charismatic, calm, and someone who made her heart flutter every time they were together. She was drawn to him in a way she couldn't resist. In fact, it seemed like Amaya was the one who pursued him more intensely after Ravindra convinced her to be intimate for the first time. From that point on, she couldn't bear to be apart from him. She was willing to do anything to stay close to him. Once again, Ravindra proved that his charm and natural ability to win over women hadn't faded. Initially, they tried to keep things discreet. Both were careful to protect their reputations and Ravindra's marriage. They would sneak around for their secret rendezvous. But as their relationship deepened, Amaya suggested renting a house where they could spend time together more freely. Ravindra, despite knowing better, gave in. It became their private escape, a place where they could meet after Ravindra's long days at work. Their affair went undetected for over 3 months. In March 2021, however, everything came crashing down. Ravindra's son, Thusatha, had grown suspicious of his father's behavior. One day, he managed to access Ravindra's phone and uncovered shocking evidence of his father's infidelity. There were chat histories, photos, and even videos of Ravindra with another woman. Among them was a particularly damning photo of Ravindra in a room without clothes. Thusatha immediately took this information to his mother, Payumi. The revelation devastated the entire family. Payumi was furious, feeling betrayed by the man she had spent her life with. Recognizing the figure in the incriminating photo, Payumi contacted the foundation where Amaya worked. She unleashed her anger, threatening to terminate the partnership that had been in place for nearly a year. What was supposed to be a productive collaboration had, in her eyes, become a source of chaos and destruction for their family. The foundation quickly responded, issuing an apology and confronting Amaya. They made it clear that her actions were unacceptable and even threatened to fire her. What had once been a hidden affair now stood exposed, leaving Ravindra's personal and professional lives in complete disarray. On the flip side, the fallout from Ravindra's actions left his family furious. Feeling the full weight of his mistakes, Ravindra apologized to his wife and children and made the decision to end the project that had brought so much turmoil into their lives. However, his son Thusatha wasn't satisfied with just an apology. Fueled by anger, Thusatha went to the foundation's office where Amaya worked and publicly humiliated her in front of her colleagues, further damaging her mental state. Following the incident, Amaya chose to resign from her position without waiting for disciplinary action from the foundation. After that, she disappeared for about a month before resurfacing in Kurunegala, where she took a job at a cosmetics shop. Despite everything, Amaya still tried to reconnect with Ravindra, secretly contacting him several times. She even went as far as waiting for him in the parking lot of the tea processing factory where he worked. But Ravindra, now focused on repairing his relationship with his family, avoided her completely, even though memories of their affair lingered in his mind. At 49, Ravindra wasn't a young man anymore, but his charisma and commanding presence were undeniable. He always carried himself with confidence, dressed sharply, and had an aura of authority that was hard to ignore. Many people admired him, especially the women around him. His polished appearance and sturdy frame made him a magnetic figure among the factory workers, including some of the female tea pickers who often flirted with him. In fact, some of these women couldn't help but question why Ravindra had chosen to marry Payumi, who was older and, as they described, far from glamorous. Rumors floated around, including wild theories about Payumi using Susak, a mystical charm, to keep him by her side. However, most agreed that her wealth and substantial inheritance played a significant role in their marriage. Meanwhile, Ravindra continued to stir interest among those around him. One particular factory worker, Upeksha, a 21-year-old widow, had caught his attention. Originally a full-time worker in tea processing, Upeksha started receiving special assignments from Ravindra. Over time, she began assisting him in his office a couple of times a week. As the weeks passed, her visits became more frequent, and soon, she was in Ravindra's office almost daily. Upeksha couldn't help but be drawn to Ravindra. His subtle compliments and charming demeanor made her feel special. She began to flirt with him openly, encouraged by his playful and charismatic personality. At home, she found herself daydreaming about him, liking his photos on social media, and posting statuses that hinted at her admiration. Ravindra, not wanting to seem aloof, responded with light-hearted jokes and playful comments, only fueling her interest further. By May 2021, Mrs. Payumi's suspicions about her husband, Ravindra, began to resurface. Ravindra, who had always been punctual and home by 5 p.m., was now staying out late, claiming he had important work at the factory. This was completely out of character for him. In the past, Ravindra always prioritized time with his family and left any late-night tasks to the night shift staff. Over the years, There had never been any mention of urgent work, so why now? Encouraged by her children, Payumi decided to investigate. One day, she went to the tea processing factory and discreetly questioned the staff and security guards about this supposed important work. Their responses were vague and hesitant. The truth was, they had no idea what Ravindra was doing after 5 p.m. They only knew he left his office on time but didn't go straight home. Caught between loyalty to their manager and fear of saying the wrong thing, their confusion only deepened Payumi's suspicions. When Ravindra found out about her visit, he was furious. He accused her of embarrassing him in front of his staff and making it seem like they weren't getting along, or worse, that he was up to no good. But Payumi stood her ground. She warned him that if he was hiding something or straying, he would face consequences. After all, the house, the family's wealth, and even his job at the factory were thanks to her family. Their children would also be devastated if they discovered their father's behavior. Feeling cornered, Ravindra promised to come home on time moving forward. The thought of losing everything made him agree, though it was clear he feared his wife's financial control more than her disappointment. By early September 2021, whispers of trouble in Ravindra's workplace began circulating. Factory staff noticed frequent heated arguments in his office, often involving Upeksha, the young widow who had been spending increasing amounts of time there. While no one dared to speak openly, signs of strain were evident. Upeksha was often seen with swollen, tearful eyes, and on some days, she had bruises on her cheeks. She refused to explain what was happening, leaving room for speculation. It wasn't long before rumors of a hidden affair between Ravindra and Upeksha began to spread among the workers. In mid-September, Ravindra decided to take a break from work, using the opportunity to visit Kandy with Payumi under the pretense of seeing their children. While in Kandy, Ravindra made a decisive move. He contacted one of his trusted colleagues at the factory and ordered Upeksha's immediate dismissal. He claimed she was disruptive, resentful, and no longer a good fit for the team. With Ravindra's money, influence, and authority, the decision was executed swiftly. By the end of that same day, Upeksha was fired and told never to return. Naturally, Upeksha was furious. After being fired, she made several trips to Ravindra's home, but it was always empty because the family was out of town. Frustrated, she resorted to throwing stones at the front door and windows, causing a stir in the neighborhood. Concerned neighbors called Ravindra to inform him of the disturbance. Ravindra wasted no time. He contacted a colleague who quickly tracked down Upeksha's residence. Ravindra then sent a chilling message, threatening her to stay away from his family or face dire consequences. According to neighbors near Upeksha's rental home, mysterious men later began showing up, throwing stones at her door and intimidating her. Feeling unsafe and shaken, Upeksha left her rented home within a week and returned to her hometown of Palakil. By early October 2021, Ravindra and his wife Payumi had returned to Kurunagola. Ravindra resumed work the very next day, now accompanied by a new assistant, a young tea picker who had only been employed for a week. He quickly promoted her to his personal assistant, drawing curious glances from his staff. Meanwhile, rumors about Upeksha's abrupt dismissal began to surface, and they weren't pretty. The talk around the factory was that Upeksha had been fired because she was pregnant, and not just pregnant, but carrying Ravindra's child. This rumor reached Ravindra himself, delivered by his boss, who mentioned that Upeksha had sworn to the head manager that the baby was his. Ravindra flatly denied the accusation, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. He painted Upeksha as a scorned woman who had once professed her love for him and begged to become his second wife, a request he firmly rejected. According to Ravindra, her pregnancy rumor was nothing more than a spiteful attempt to tarnish his reputation after he turned her down. Despite Ravindra's attempts to control the narrative, the rumors only gained momentum. Then things escalated when photos began circulating in a staff group chat. Pictures of Ravindra and Upeksha kissing in his office and another of them in a private room. These images left little room for doubt among the factory workers and sent Ravindra into a state of panic. He was terrified of Payumi discovering the truth and tried to come up with a way to cover his tracks. Hoping to avoid any confrontation at home, Ravindra suggested another trip out of town, proposing that they visit their children again. But Payumi wasn't interested. She declined, saying she was still exhausted from their last trip and had no desire to travel anywhere. Instead, she insisted on staying home. By early October 2021, Mrs. Payumi received a shocking phone call from a woman claiming she was 4 months pregnant with Ravindra's child. The woman, who introduced herself as Ishara, invited Payumi to meet in person to discuss the matter. Skeptical but curious, Payumi agreed. When they met, Ishara presented a collection of evidence: chat logs, intimate voice notes, and most damning of all, a 4-minute video showing Ravindra in a compromising situation with her. The video sent Payumi into a rage. Overwhelmed by jealousy and betrayal, she lashed out at Ishara, demanding she leave immediately. Ishara, however, refused and insisted that Ravindra take responsibility for his actions. As tensions escalated, Payumi, already in poor health, collapsed from the stress. Ishara quickly called for help, and Payumi was rushed to the hospital. Ravindra was immediately alarmed when he found out that Ishara had been involved in his wife's sudden illness. Furious, he confronted Ishara at the hospital, demanding she leave. But Ishara stood her ground. Unlike Upeksha, who had been intimidated into silence, Ishara was determined to expose Ravindra and hold him accountable. She boldly shouted, drawing attention to the manager's infidelity and tarnishing his once pristine reputation. Ravindra, desperate to avoid further drama, left the hospital, making arrangements to transfer his wife to Kurunegala Regional Hospital and plotting to have Ishara removed as a troublemaker. 4 days after the transfer, Payumi's condition improved, and her children arrived from out of town to visit. Despite her heartbreak, Payumi chose not to share the details of Ravindra's affair, fearing it would devastate her sons. However, Ishara was not ready to back down. A few days later, she arrived at the regional hospital, determined to confront Ravindra again. When Ravindra spotted her, panic set in. He quickly dragged Ishara into a secluded room near the restrooms, keeping her away from his wife and children. Ishara demanded justice, but Ravindra, losing control, reacted violently. He struck her and grabbed her by the neck in an attempt to silence her. Ishara, however, fought back. In desperation, she pulled a knife from her bag and retaliated. The commotion drew hospital staff, but by the time they arrived, it was too late. Ishara had subdued Ravindra with the weapon, and the 55-year-old manager succumbed to his injuries 2 hours later. Ishara was immediately taken into custody by authorities, marking a tragic and dramatic end to the saga of Ravindra's double life. For over a week, Ishara stayed silent, keeping her emotions bottled up. But when her lawyers brought Upeksha, the former factory worker, from her village in Giridina to testify about Ravindra's behavior, the story took a dramatic turn. Upeksha revealed that she was 7 months pregnant, a result of her affair with Ravindra. She also admitted that she'd thought she was the only one seduced by the charismatic manager, only to discover she wasn't alone. Her co-worker Ishara had fallen victim too. Ishara, emboldened by Upeksha's testimony, admitted she had wanted to speak up long ago but had kept quiet after seeing how Upeksha had been mistreated, threatened, and silenced. However, once Ishara realized she was pregnant, she felt compelled to expose Ravindra's true nature. She couldn't allow more women to fall prey to his manipulative charm. Ravindra, who had long been admired and respected, was revealed to have a pattern of targeting vulnerable women, especially young widows or new hires at the factory. He would seduce them with sweet promises, only to leave destruction in his wake. Ishara's lawyer worked tirelessly to gather more evidence and even brought Amaya, Ravindra's former lover, to testify in court. Amaya revealed that Ravindra had not only seduced her but had also promised marriage, only to turn threatening and manipulative once he'd gotten what he wanted. She shared evidence, including chat logs, voice recordings, and even the ring Ravindra had given her during their affair. Amaya admitted she had been lucky to avoid pregnancy, thanks to her precautions, but she sympathized deeply with Upeksha and Ishara, who had been left to face the consequences of Ravindra's broken promises. Amaya's testimony painted an even darker picture of Ravindra. She described how, after promising marriage and a better future, Ravindra had turned cold and even threatened her life if she dared to expose him. Upeksha and Ishara had both believed his lies and given themselves to him, only to be abandoned and told to terminate their pregnancies. It became clear that Ravindra's charm was a mask, hiding a man who manipulated and exploited women for his own pleasure. Meanwhile, Payumi and her children struggled to process the damning evidence piling up against the late Ravindra. They initially rejected the claims, insisting they were lies meant to tarnish his memory. But the evidence was undeniable. Photographs, messages, and testimonies from multiple women. Deep down, Payumi knew the truth. She had long suspected her husband's infidelity but had chosen to stay silent to protect her family's reputation and spare her children the shame. Court revelations also brought to light another shocking detail. Ravindra had promised Upeksha a house and even claimed he would divorce Payumi to marry her. These false promises only further highlighted how deeply Ravindra had manipulated the women around him, leaving a trail of heartbreak and betrayal. In the end, the High Court in Kurunegala, Sri Lanka, reached its verdict on the tragic case of Ishera and the late Mr. Ravindra. After reviewing all the evidence, including hospital CCTV footage, the judge and jury concluded that Ishera acted in self-defense. The video clearly showed that Ravindra was the aggressor, attacking the tea factory worker first. In her desperate attempt to protect herself, Ishera fought back, which tragically led to his death. Despite the circumstances, Ishera was sentenced to a maximum of 15 years in prison for her actions. The court acknowledged that while her response was out of self-defense, the severity of her retaliation warranted legal consequences. On the other hand, Amaya and Upeksha, who were also victims of Ravindra's manipulative and predatory behavior, were not punished. They were instead recognized as individuals exploited by the manager's charm and deceit. It appears Ravindra's family chose not to appeal the decision, perhaps due to the overwhelming evidence against him. The photographic and video records, along with the testimonies from multiple women, painted a clear picture of his misconduct. If Ravindra had survived, it's likely he would have faced significant legal repercussions for his inappropriate and predatory actions toward numerous women. The case left the community in shock, serving as a sobering reminder of how unchecked power and manipulation can lead to devastating consequences. It also gave voice to the women who had been silenced for too long, exposing the truth about Ravindra's double life. While justice may not heal all wounds, it brought some closure to those affected by his actions. What lessons can we learn from this story?